Hey, it's James Ross. It's Ryzen Launch Day, and I finally got my 1800X up and running smoothly and reliably. It was not easy. I'm going to take you through a few of the steps that I had to go through, so hopefully you don't have to pay that early adopter's tax.
Alright, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to want to update the BIOS. I picked up one of these ASUS Prime X370 Pros this morning at Micro Center. It was one of the only X370 boards that they had available besides the Corsair. Probably not my first choice in motherboards, but it's fine. When I got it back to the office here, I picked up some of the dual channel DDR4 and put it in, and for whatever reason the sticks that I picked up were not compatible. It wouldn't boot correctly, so I had to update the BIOS first. There's an update that for memory compatibility. Unfortunately, ASUS's site this morning did not have this drivers and tools page available. It was just a blank screen, so I had to go hunting around for that BIOS update. Anyway, it's all up and running now, so we can walk you through how I would do it. And just grab the updated BIOS file here. You can see this version 0504 had an update in 228 that enhanced memory compatibility. This did the trick for me. It enabled me to use that dual channel DDR4 memory set that I picked up earlier and allowed it to boot. So just download this. It's going to save it to a file. You're going to want to extract that zip and put it on a FAT32 formatted USB stick on another computer, and then you're going to want to take it back to your new rig, boot to the BIOS, and then use the BIOS utility to upgrade with this new version. In this case, it's the 0504 for this particular motherboard. Either way, it's a good practice since this whole X370 chipset and all of the different Ryzen chipsets are all brand new. Your best bet is to always update the BIOS when you first get it. So the next major problem that I ran into was that Windows was crashing. I went through the installation process. It took about 3 times of trying it to get it to finally complete. Initially I thought that there were maybe motherboard issues. Perhaps it was the RAM that was bad. Perhaps the CPU cooler was not sitting completely flush and was getting too hot. I couldn't really tell because I was in the installation process. Every time I went back to the BIOS, all the temps were in spec. I thought maybe there was an incompatibility with the NVMe slot in this particular BIOS version. None of that turned out to be true. What ended up happening is I had a USB stick that I had an ISO of an old Windows 10 version. For whatever reason, you're going to need at least the Windows 10 anniversary update, which is this version 1607, to get anywhere with the Ryzen chips. Basically, you can go and use the Windows utility to download. Here we go. And get it directly from Microsoft. And you can download this tool, and it will download the latest ISO for Windows 10. And you are able to put that on a USB stick. I highly recommend that you do that to avoid the pain that I went through. So if you don't do that and you install an older version, normally what would happen is you could just use Windows Update to update to the latest version, and you wouldn't have any issues. But because this chipset is so new, and because there seem to be compatibility issues still, it just wouldn't work. It was blue screening all over the place. I couldn't update, and it seems to me like a lot of the other reviewers that posted today were also having issues like this. So make sure that the ISO that you have when installing Windows is at least this version 1607 or higher, and you can download that directly from Microsoft. Alright, so the third thing that you want to do is you want to get the latest chipset drivers that you can. In my case, I got a motherboard that has the X370 chipset in it, and usually what you do is you go directly to the motherboard manufacturer, you go to this drivers and tools section on their support page, you'd find the chipset driver and you download and install it. There's also the B350 and a few other chipsets that support Ryzen. I'm just talking about the board that I bought that has X370 in it. The problem that I had today was that this package that ASUS uploaded onto their support page for the X370 did not work correctly. I downloaded it 3 different times. The package, every time that I would try to install it, would install partially. There was some kind of error that would happen with whatever they packaged here. They did it incorrectly. So with the partial install, it wasn't detecting the graphics card correctly. There was a whole bunch of other errors. It just was not a stable system. Even after the Windows anniversary updates and the BIOS updates, I was still experiencing blue screens of death, and it was bad news. I thought the motherboard was done. So what I ended up doing is going over directly to the AMD site, and you can go to support and drivers here, and you can pick chipsets. You can pick the Ryzen, the AM4, and you can pick the different chipsets here. We've got X370, B350, A320, mine's the X370, and you can pick your OS version. I'm on Windows 10 64-bit. Display results. You can download this package. This package worked beautifully, and you can see it's like half the size of what's included with the chipset drivers from ASUS. Why? I have no idea. Get it directly from AMD if you have it, and you won't have any issues, and it should hopefully lead to a much more stable system for you. Alright, so number 4, I had a weird error that was happening whenever I would plug in a USB 2 device, such as my mouse here, into a USB 3 port, which are the vast majority of the ports on this ASUS X370 Pro motherboard. It would just stop working, or it'd cut out and it'd work for a little bit, and the mouse would skip all over the place. ASUS actually has a little FAQ here about why doesn't my mouse or keyboard work. They say that it's a Windows setting where you're supposed to enhance the pointer precision. This did absolutely nothing for me. It didn't work at all. What did, however, work is if you go to drivers and tools here, Windows 10, there was a USB controller update. This worked. Yeah, do that right away, because whatever is used by Windows by default did not work correctly. Okay, so number 5, you have to turn Windows into the high performance mode, and I'll show you why. So if we go in and we open up Task Manager and we go over to this performance section and we look, if you have to go to logical processors. But do you see how half of these cores are parked and they're not doing anything? Yep, that's Windows Power Management. So go to Control Panel, open that up, look for your power settings, click this button that says Choose Power Plan, enable High Performance Mode, change plan settings, Advanced Power, and what this does, there's Processor Power Management, and now you can see once we switch it to that high performance mode, all of the cores are active. Now this has something to do with how Windows manages minimum processor power state, and there isn't an option that you could see in those settings, but when you're on high performance, that makes you have all of the cores be active. You definitely want to do that, otherwise it's going to be running at like half power, and that is one of the tips that I found that you have to do out of the box to get your Ryzen to run like you want it to. Alright, I know this probably goes without saying, but you should do it anyway. Get the latest graphics card drivers for the graphics card that's in your computer. So in this case, I just went to NVIDIA. You're going to search for your operating system, grab the latest release, install that. Also, turn on Windows Update. Push all of those Windows updates that you can. Sometimes there are different controllers that need updates and such as that. And that should hopefully help resolve all of the issues that you have with the latest Ryzen chips and CPUs and make your rig run smoothly. But hey, it was not all doom and gloom today. I was able to get the 1800X up to a little above 4 gigahertz. That seemed to be a little bit of a challenge. Had to add quite a bit of voltage to get it above there stable. But I did manage to get a 1751 on Cinebench, which I was pretty happy with. I've got an H100 V2 in here. I've got it on quiet profile right now, but it can turn that up to performance when running it hard. I plan on using this mostly for video editing and general purpose computing. So I was pretty happy with this, as most of the uses that I have are going to be multi-core. It seemed to me that anything up to 4 gigahertz was pretty easy to achieve almost a stable overclock on stock voltage, and then after that it was like not even worth it. I was able to get to 4.1, but it was getting really close to 1.5 volts here to get that stable. It just wasn't worth it. So I dropped this back down to 1.35 on stock voltage, and 1850 across all 8 cores is more than fast enough for me at this point. 4 gigahertz was stable pretty much at that same voltage. I'll play around with it the next few days and see what we can achieve. But the H100 V2 seems to be doing a good job at keeping this thing cool. There was pretty limited AM4 cooling selection this morning when I went out to Micro Center to pick all this stuff up. But overall, pretty happy. Got a NVMe Samsung 960. Seems really fast. Everything seems nice and smooth. And after many hours of hunting for BIOS and other drivers today, it seems like it's a stable system. So all good. Hopefully, if I was able to help any of you guys get past some of these early adopters blues, you might call it, or whatever, give me a like or subscribe to my channel. Thanks.